Hello everyone and welcome back. 안녕하세요. 반갑습니다. This is Jiwon and you are listening to Understanding Korea one story at a time where we talk about Korean history, culture, and the very specific ways they quietly shape our everyday lives. Today we are going back to the table. More specifically, we are going back to the table for one. Last week, I talked about honbap, eating alone in Korea, why it became such a loaded word, and why one person sitting at one table can carry so much social meaning. So I will not repeat the whole background today. The short version is this. In Korea, a meal has rarely been just a meal. It can be care, belonging, hierarchy, obligation, affection, performance, and sometimes a full emotional group project with side dishes. That is why the sentence, I just want to eat alone, can be doing more work than it seems. Today, I want to approach honbap from a slightly different angle, through two Korean books that have not been translated into English. In this week's newsletter, I followed how honbap moved through Korean popular culture. Dramas, webtoons, variety shows, and Korean karaoke booth. This podcast takes a slower path. Here, I want to spend more time with the books behind the essay, because they give us something the screen cannot always give as easily. The inner texture of lunch, loneliness, family, labor, and the tired modern self. So if the newsletter gives you the cultural map, I hope this episode gives you the emotional close-up. Together, they tell a fuller story. The first book is 혼자 점심 먹는 사람을 위한 산문, Prose for people who eat lunch alone, a collection of short essays by 10 Korean writers about lunch. Lunch as memory, labor, solitude, family, the small hour in the middle of the day when a person tries to return to herself. The second is 강보라's 나만 잘 되게 해주세요. Please let me be the one who makes it. A sharp and quietly funny book about the modern Korean self. Why people want to be seen, respected, left alone, recognized, and spared from the exhausting work of constantly adjusting themselves to others. So today's episode is not just about eating alone. It is about what lunch reveals. It is about what happens when togetherness becomes beautiful, necessary, and tiring all at once. And it is about why Korea needed not only new habits, but new words, new shows, new essays, and new little public spaces for being alone. So let's begin with the first book. There is a book published in Korea whose title, translated fairly literally, reads Prose for People Who Eat Lunch Alone. Not essays about lunch, not meditations on solitude, not even the art of eating alone, which sounds like something sold next to a ceramic bowl, a linen napkin, and a suspiciously calm candle. No, this book is for people who eat lunch alone. I love the directness of the title. It does not say this book is about lunch. It says, in effect, this book is for you, the person eating lunch alone. That little difference matters. A book about lunch could be general. A book for people who eat lunch alone is an address. It imagines a reader. It imagines someone sitting at a cafeteria table or at an office desk or in a corner of a cafe or maybe on a park bench with a convenience store kimbap trying to pass through the middle of the day without too much damage. The book gathers 10 Korean writers, each contributing 5 short prose pieces. And an introduction begins with 2 very simple questions. What did you eat for lunch today? And what does lunch mean to you? Those questions sound light, but they open a whole world. Lunch is a strange meal. Breakfast often belongs to the body or to duty. Dinner often belongs to family, romance, obligation, or collapse. But lunch sits in the middle of the day. It is squeezed between work and work, between morning effort and afternoon survival. It is too short to be ceremonial, but too necessary to ignore. The book's introduction mentions the film Patterson, where the main character, a bus driver, writes poetry during his lunch breaks. That image matters. Lunch is not just eating. Lunch can be a small protected room inside the day. A bench, a notebook, a cafeteria tray, a walk, a quiet hour when no one asks too much of you. And the essays in this collection are short enough to be read during lunch. That feels important. They are not giant philosophical essays demanding that you cancel your afternoon meeting. They fit into the very crack of time they are describing. That is the first thing I love about this book. It respects the size of lunch. Not everything has to become enormous to matter. And now the book begins to show us the many things lunch can hold. One of the reasons this book works so well for this topic is that it does not treat eating alone as one single emotion. It is not always freedom. It is not always loneliness. Sometimes it is a memory arriving through food. One essay I keep thinking about is by Kang Ji-hee. She writes about eating acorn jelly, 도토리묵, for lunch. If you have never had acorn jelly, it is not dessert. It is a soft, savory Korean food made from acorn starch. It has a gentle, earthy flavor and a slightly wobbly texture. In the essay, Kang prepares it simply with chopped kimchi, water parsley, roasted seaweed, and sesame oil. It is the kind of lunch that sounds humble, but in Korean writing, humble foods are often just waiting to ambush you emotionally. And this is exactly what happens. The essay begins with lunch, but then it drifts toward memory. Kang Ji-hee remembers her grandfather on Jeju Island. He knew the mountains well. He used to climb Mount Hallasan, the volcanic mountain at the center of Jeju Island, to harvest bracken fern. He would dry it and send it to Seoul. Her mother would save that bracken carefully and bring it out only on good days. When Kang Ji-hee ate it, she remembers feeling that her life might soften a little, as if she were being held inside something large and warm. That emotional movement is so beautiful to me because this is supposedly an essay about eating lunch alone, but it is not really about being alone. It is about how eating alone can sometimes make other people more present. The grandfather climbing a mountain, the mother saving the precious food, the package sent from Jeju to Seoul, the child who may not have understood it all at the time, but now eats and remembers. This is where honbap becomes more complicated. Eating alone does not always mean eating without relationships. Sometimes eating alone is when relationships become most vivid. There is no conversation at the table, but suddenly you are eating with the dead, with your childhood, with your mother's hands, with a mountain, with a whole family line of people who fed you before you knew how to feed yourself. You're alone, and somehow less alone than you have been all week. The book does not let us stay too long in the warmth of memory. Another Kang Ji-hee's essay turns lunch in a much harder direction. She writes about her years as an adjunct professor. In Korea, as in many places, that can mean a precarious academic life. Long commutes, low pay, uncertain future, and the need to appear competent even when your body is quietly falling apart. She describes leaving home hours before class, teaching long stretches on an empty stomach, and finally eating after work with the kind of hunger that is no longer just physical. She remembers craving sundae, Korean blood sausage, and tteokbokki, spicy rice cakes after class. That detail feels painfully real. There's nothing abstract about burnout when you're standing in front of a snack shop at dusk, trying to replace 6 hours of performance with rice cakes and blood sausage. Then one day, while teaching, she collapses. She has low blood pressure. She hits the floor. Students scream. An ambulance comes. She ends up in the emergency room. But what frightens her most is not the fall. It is not even the hospital visit. What frightens her most is what this might mean for her work. The teaching evaluations, the rumors, the possibility that she might be seen as someone whose body cannot handle the job. That detail stopped me because the essay is about lunch, but it is also about labor. It is about who gets to eat without fear, who gets to say, I need a break, who gets to have a body at work. Near the end of the essay, she expresses the hope that lunch might one day become a comfortable, obvious right for everyone. That sentence makes the whole subject shift. Suddenly, solo lunch is not a lifestyle aesthetic. It is not a cute little trend. It is not, look at me, I'm independent and mysterious with my tray. It becomes a question of labor. Who has a lunch break? Who can actually take it? Who can eat slowly without feeling that the meal itself is a professional risk? A peaceful lunch is not equally available to everyone. That is one of the reasons I like this essay collection. It does not flatten lunch into one meaning. Lunch can be memory, rest, freedom, loneliness, labor politics, and the only time in the day when your body tells the truth. Now let me bring in another writer from the collection, Kim Shin-hwe. Her essay about cafeteria food is honestly wonderful. She writes about having worked as an office employee and waiting for lunchtime with intense anticipation. For many office workers, she says, the best thing about work is the salary. The second best thing is lunch. But here's the twist. Her co-workers wanted to leave the office and eat somewhere outside together. They wanted the proper group lunch. Everyone goes out, someone chooses a restaurant, people order together, people talk together, people return together. But she wanted something else. She wanted to eat quietly and alone in the company cafeteria. And I love the way she explains why. She has loved the buffet since childhood. Not necessarily because she can eat enormous amounts, but because of the autonomy. You get your own plate, you choose what you want. You take as much as you want. You move through the line. You assemble your meal. For a child who grew up eating what adults decided was healthy, bland, necessary, or educational, the buffet felt like a freedom. Not grand freedom, not revolution, tray freedom. The freedom to decide how much rice, which side dish, whether to skip soup, whether to take more japchae, whether to avoid the mysterious texture without giving a speech about it. That is such an important point. Sometimes eating alone is not about hating people. Sometimes it is about making one tiny choice without negotiation. In Korean office life, lunch can become another extension of work. You may not be at your desk, but you are still performing. You are still adjusting your pace, your menu, your speech, your face. You are still reading the mood. A cafeteria tray can become a small zone of self rule. And that brings us naturally to the second book. 강보라's 나만 잘 되게 해주세요. Please let me be the one who makes it helps explain why a small act like eating alone can carry so much emotional charge in contemporary Korea. The Korean title 나만 잘 되게 해주세요 literally means something like please let only me do well. In English, that sounds very selfish, almost villainous. But in Korean, the emotional tone is more complicated. It is selfish, yes, but it can also sound tired, funny, and quietly desperate. It's more like, please at least let me survive. 강보라's book is not only about honbap, it is about modern Korean self. How people try to protect their desires, preferences, fandoms, tastes, identities, and emotional energy in a society still strongly shaped by collective expectations. One of her key insights is that eating is, in one sense, deeply personal. No one can be hungry for you. No one can chew for you. No one can digest for you. Although Korean mothers may occasionally behave as if they would be willing to try. But human beings turned eating into a shared practice. And in Korea, that shared practice became heavily tied to family, belonging, and social order. Kangbora's point is not simply that Korean meals are social. I've talked about that before. The Korean table can be a place of care, belonging, manners, hierarchy, and family education. What she helps us see here is the other side of that warmth. When eating together becomes the default, eating alone can feel like a small interruption in the social script. It is not always a rejection of other people. Sometimes it is just a way to stop adjusting yourself for one meal. And that phrase matters. Too much adjustment. Because there's a special kind of tiredness that comes not from doing hard work, but from constantly calibrating yourself. How much should I say? Am I eating too slowly? Should I pour for him? Is she uncomfortable? Do I look rude? Can I leave? Do I have to go to the second round? In Korean, this ability to read the room is called 눈치. And 눈치 can be a beautiful social intelligence. It helps people care for each other without always needing direct words. But constant 눈치 is exhausting. At some point, you may want a meal where the only mood you have to read is your own appetite. This is where 혼술, drinking alone, becomes important too. In the drama 혼술 남녀, drinking solo, the male lead enjoys drinking alone because he does not have to match anyone else's pace. He does not have to perform sociability. He does not have to laugh when he does not want to laugh. This may sound antisocial if you have never experienced Korean group drinking. But Korean drinking culture, especially in work settings, can come with a full operating system. There are rules about who pours, who receives, who initiates a toast, who can stop drinking, who can leave, and who must pretend that just one more round is a harmless sentence rather than the beginning of a very long night. So, against that background, 혼술 does not simply mean I drink alone because I am lonely. It can mean for 1 hour I'm off duty. No hierarchy, no glass watching, no forced enthusiasm, no emotional group project disguised as grilled pork belly. Just one person, one drink, and the radical possibility of not performing. This is why Kangbora's book is so helpful. It lets us see honbap and honsul not as proof that people have become cold or selfish, but as signs that people are becoming more honest about how much energy togetherness can require. The book is not manifesto. It reads more like a quiet, gently funny field report from inside a society trying to renegotiate the terms of its own togetherness. The phrase, please let me do well, sounds selfish at first, but in the word Kangbora describes, it is closer to a tired little prayer. Please let me not fall behind. Please let me not be compared today. Please let me have one small hour that belongs to me. Now, if honbap is sometimes a break from performance, then we also need to ask, what kind of performance happens at the shared table? This brings us back to Prose for people who eat lunch alone and to Kim Shin-hwa's essay about small talk. She writes about strange difficulty of eating with people who are not exactly strangers, not exactly friends, but people with whom silence becomes a small hostage situation. A boss, a colleague, a work contact, someone technically nice but not close enough for comfortable silence. And then comes the question, what do we talk about while eating? Small talk. Kim Shin-hwa is very funny about this. She points out that small talk sounds small, but it is not small at all. Many human relationships begin with it. It can soften the room. It can create trust. It can prevent everyone from staring into their soup as if waiting for rescue. But small talk is also hard. Questions can be dangerous because you do not know where the answer will go. Compliments can become awkward. Personal topics can become landmines. The safest small talk, she suggests, is harmless, light, and easy to forget. Weather, vacation plans, maybe the humidity, though Korean humidity can quickly become a national psychological event. What I love about this essay is that it reveals another reason eating alone can feel like relief. A meal with others is not just food plus people. It is food plus timing, face management, topic selection, mood reading, and the tiny fear that the conversation has died and now you have to bring it back to life. When we say honbap is convenient, we often mean time and money. But convenience is emotional too. Eating alone means no small talk, no conversational risk, no need to prove that you are a pleasant lunch companion. You can just eat. And sometimes that is a profound luxury. Kim Shin-hwa has another essay about the phrase, I will buy you lunch. This phrase is very important in Korean social life. 밥 살게, I will buy you a meal. It can mean thank you, I'm sorry, I owe you, I want to spend time with you. It can mean let us not define this relationship too directly because we are Korean and therefore must communicate through rice. In the essay, Kim Shin-hwae writes about a friend who promises to host her for a full-course lunch near his office. He buys the meal, then he buys coffee, and she reflects on how satisfying that is, not simply because she saved money, but because the promise was clean. If someone says, I will buy you lunch, then that should mean lunch. Not, I will buy lunch and you buy coffee. Not, I will buy this time and you owe me next time. Not, let us enter a hidden contract of mutual coffee debt. She jokes about this, but there is a deeper point. Meals are relational currency in Korea. They carry meaning beyond the price. So when a meal is given clearly, without calculation, it feels like care. And when it is muddy, when the expectation is hidden, it can feel like a trap. Again, the table is never just the table. This is why eating alone can be peaceful. Not because eating with others is bad, but because eating with others can be full of invisible exchanges. Who pays, who owes, who chooses, who receives, who performs gratitude, who remembers next time. A solo meal removes that entire accounting system. You pay, you eat, you live. Beautiful, almost suspiciously simple. Now I want to move from books to screens because this is where Korean popular culture becomes important. In the newsletter, I wrote about Korean dramas and shows like 식사를 합시다, Let's Eat, 나 혼자 산다, I Live Alone, and 혼술남녀, Drinking Solo. Here I want to frame them a little differently. What Korean popular culture did in the 2010s was not simply show people eating alone. It gave the solo eater a genre. Let's Eat made the solo meal appetizing, lively, and worth watching. I Live Alone made the one-person household into Friday night entertainment. Drinking Solo turned the exhausted drinker into a character, not a warning sign. And Webtoon made the small rooms of solo life emotionally readable. That matters because solo life is often made of tiny details that do not look dramatic from the outside. A half empty refrigerator, a cheap table, the decision to fry an egg, the guilt of wasting vegetables, the weird satisfaction of eating directly from a pot because washing one extra bowl feels like bureaucracy. These details are small, but they are not trivial. In a culture where food has often been tied to care from someone else, cooking alone can become a quiet declaration. I can feed myself. I can be both the person who gives care and the person who receives it. But let's not make this too inspirational. Sometimes cooking alone is not empowerment. Sometimes it is just standing in the kitchen at 9:40 p.m., holding a spoon, wondering whether kimchi counts as a vegetable. Still, these scenes matter because they make one person's life visible not as a failure, but as daily life. They make it legible. And there is 혼코노, short for 혼자 코인 노래방, going to coin karaoke alone. Traditional Korean karaoke, 노래방, is social. It often comes after dinner, after drinks, after someone says, just one more place, which is the beginning of danger. People sing, people clap, people pretend not to notice when someone chooses the same dramatic breakup song twice. But coin karaoke changes the scale. You pay by song. You enter a small booth. You sing alone. No waiting, no group pressure, no need to choose a song everyone knows. No one judging whether your emotional relationship with the sad songs is becoming medically concerning. Just you, the microphone, and 3 minutes of main character suffering. But honkono is not the same as singing at home. That is the key. You're alone, but in public. You're inside a tiny private room, but the building is full of other tiny private rooms. Other people are also singing alone. Through the walls, you may hear the muffled evidence of other people's heartbreak, ambition, delusion, or excellent pitch control. That is Korean public solitude in miniature. Private but not isolated. Public but not socially demanding. Alone but surrounded by other people being alone. This is why I keep returning to the phrase being alone in public. Korea did not simply become more individualistic. It built spaces where people could be alone without fully leaving society. A convenience store counter, a cafe window seat, a study cafe cubicle, a coin karaoke booth. Each one says there is a place for your one body, your one voice, your one tray, your 1 hour. And that matters in a society where, for a long time, being alone in public could feel like an explanation waiting to happen. Now, I want to be careful here. It would be too simple to say, Korea used to be collective and now it is individualistic. That is not quite right. The Korean self still lives inside 우리, the Korean we. Koreans say 우리나라, our country, 우리 엄마, our mom, even 우리 남편, our husband, which sounds in English like the beginning of a legal problem, but is completely normal in Korean. The Korean self is born into a language of relation. That can be beautiful, it can be also exhausting. So modern solo culture did not erase we. It created small rooms inside it. A lunch hour, a cafeteria tray, a drama scene, a coin karaoke booth, a cafe seat, a one-person meal. For a little while, the self gets to sit down. And here I want to return again to 강보라's phrase. 나만 잘 되게 해주세요. Please let me be the one who makes it. Please let me do well. Please at least let me survive. 강보라's book helps us see that the modern Korean self is not simply selfish. It is tired, it is compared, it is watched, it is hyper-connected. It wants recognition, but also wants relief from being perceived. That is very contemporary and very Korean. But maybe not only Korean. Think about how many of us now live in a world where we are constantly reachable. Messages, group chats, work emails, school parent notifications, social media, read receipts, tiny digital proofs that someone knows you saw the message. In that world, being alone is not automatic. You can be physically alone and still socially surrounded. Your phone can bring the whole village to your lunch table. So sometimes honbap is not the disappearance of society. It is what happens when society follows you everywhere, even to the table, and you finally say, I would like one bowl of noodles and 10 minutes of not responding. That is not loneliness. That is a boundary with chopsticks. Before we end, I want to return to Prose for people who eat lunch alone, because the book also understands something important. Not all shared meals are bad, and not all solo meals are pure freedom. The essay takes us to a very different kind of lunch with parents. An adult child visits her parents, eats with them, prepares herself for all the familiar family choreography. care, comments, arguments, food, gifts, and side dishes packed to take home. This kind of lunch is not solitude. It is the opposite. It is thick with family. The adult child loves her parents. She notices that they are getting older. She receives food from her mother. She sends a message later saying that the potatoes were delicious. Her mother responds in the way Korean mothers often do. Why did you not take more? That sentence is funny and tender and exhausting all at once. Because the mother's love is abundant, but not always perfectly matched to what the child wants. The child is grateful, but also relieved to return to her own space. She loves her parents, but she also likes her quiet table. She eats the food her mother packed, but she eats it alone. That is the emotional honesty I appreciate. Korean writing about food is often good at this because it does not pretend that love and exhaustion cancel each other out. You can love your family and need to recover from them. You can miss shared meals and feel relief when they end. You can treasure your mother's side dishes and still want your own table. You can belong to Uri and still need a small place for me. That, to me, is the heart of this whole topic. Honbap is not a simple story of liberation. It is not finally Koreans became free individuals. It is also not a simple story of decline. It is not how sad everyone is lonely now. It is both more ordinary and more interesting. It is the story of a society where togetherness was so strong, so beautiful, so demanding, and so normalized that people needed new words, new spaces, new shows, new essays, and new habits to make room for being alone. And once that room appeared, people discovered that it could hold many things: pleasure, rest, memory, autonomy, avoidance, grief, labor, hunger, and sometimes a lunch that quietly says, I am still here. So maybe the question is not, why do Koreans eat alone now? Maybe the better question is this: what kind of society makes eating alone feel like something that needs a name? And what kind of society can make eating alone feel safe, ordinary, and chosen without abandoning the people for whom eating alone was never really a choice? That is the tension I want to leave with you today. Because a table for one can be freedom, but it can also be warning. And no app, no drama, no webtoon, no coin karaoke booth can fully tell the difference. Only care can do that. Thank you so much for listening. I hope this helped you understand the honbap not just as eating alone, but as a small cultural window into how Koreans are renegotiating togetherness, privacy, exhaustion, and the right to have one quiet meal on one's own terms. If you'd like to look more closely at the Korean words and phrases I used in today's episode, check the episode notes. I've included the Korean, romanization, and English meanings there. Take care and see you next week. 오늘도 들어주셔서 감사합니다. 다음 주에 만나요. Bye!